Have you ever seen someone who just wanted to sit in the seat they paid for, but was pushed out because they didn't look like the usual passengers in first class? Imagine this: a successful, calm, black female CEO. She boards a plane after a long day. She just wants to go home. But then, in front of everyone, she is denied her seat, not because of the wrong ticket, not because of a system error, but because of a cold, prejudiced, and suspicious look. In that moment, she has two choices: stay silent and let things continue as they were, or keep her dignity, knowing that choice could sweep her into an unexpected storm. What would you do? Would you walk away, or stay and protect your deepest humanity? This story is more than just a flight incident. It's a reminder of what we've all faced: moments of being overlooked, of being judged, of being stripped of belonging. If you're ready to embark on this emotional journey, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to join me in the story. There are evenings that move quietly, slipping through your life without leaving a mark. And then, there are evenings that split your story into before and after. This story began on one of those evenings. Seattle had that cold blue glow it often wears in late fall, the kind of chill that clings to the air long after sunset, mixing with the smell of jet fuel along the runways of North Continental Airport. Inside Terminal C, passengers hurried through the long polished halls, their rolling suitcases clattering against tile floors. Flight boards flickered between time zones. Overhead, an announcement repeated every few minutes, reminding travelers to keep an eye on their belongings. It was just another weekday evening for almost everyone, except for Dr. Alana Pierce. She walked with the sort of quiet presence that didn't demand attention, but somehow earned it. A tall woman with warm brown skin and eyes that carried a softness beneath years of holding firm in rooms that hadn't always welcomed her. She wore a simple navy coat, a black turtleneck, and a leather satchel tucked neatly under her arm. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but everything about her suggested intention, purpose, grace, and exhaustion. Her flight, Sky Vista Airlines Flight 709 direct from Seattle to New York, was supposed to be her last trip of the month. She'd promised herself she would sleep during the 5.5-hour journey, land, and spend the next morning having coffee with her younger sister in Brooklyn. Quiet, normal, needed. That was the plan. She reached gate C-47 earlier than most passengers. The boarding area buzzed with quiet conversations, families discussing plans, business travelers typing rapidly on laptops, and airport staff checking boarding passes. Alana took a seat by the window. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass, forming tiny rivers that bent and merged and ran toward the edges of the frame. She took a slow breath. Another long day behind her. Another full inbox waiting for her when she landed. She tried not to think about it. Today had already been heavy: an early meeting with investors, followed by a board session at Pierce Neural Systems, then a late lunch taken too fast, and a quiet Uber ride to the airport where she'd stared at a city she once loved, but rarely had the time to enjoy. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from her sister. "Monique, can't wait to see you tomorrow morning. I'll bring the good coffee." Alana smiled. A small, real smile, the kind she only had around people who knew her before she was Dr. Pierce, the title that some used to respect her and others used to resent her. She texted back, "Save me a seat by the window. I'll be there." She tried to hold on to that warmth as she sat alone by the gate, but a familiar tightness began growing in her chest, the feeling she hated, the one that crept in whenever she flew alone. She'd had more unpleasant experiences in airport terminals and first-class cabins than she could count. Some subtle, some unmistakably not. A gate agent announced pre-boarding, and Alana stood, pulling her coat around her shoulders. Her first-class ticket seat 1A was tucked between her fingers. She preferred aisle seats but chose 1A this time, mostly because she needed to get off the plane quickly for an early meeting the next day. It wasn't a luxury, it was practicality. As she approached the jet bridge, A man in line turned back and looked at her, then at her ticket, then away again with a faint smirk, like she didn't belong there. She ignored it. She was good at that. The jet bridge rumbled softly under her footsteps, that metallic echo that always made travel feel a bit unreal. When she stepped onto the plane, she greeted the first flight attendant with a polite smile. The attendant, a young woman named Taylor, smiled back, though something flickered in her eyes. Not unkindness, more like confusion or surprise. Alana noticed but said nothing. She simply walked down the short hallway and turned left into the first-class cabin. The cabin lights glowed a warm amber. The air smelled faintly of cedar and a hint of Vanilla Sky Vista's signature scent. Alana loved this part. Before the doors closed, before the shuffle, before the tension that often hit her in ways she couldn't predict. Seat 1A waited in the first row, near the window, perfectly lit by the soft overhead lamp. She placed her satchel beneath the seat, smoothed the front of her coat, and sat down. For a moment, it felt peaceful. The sort of peaceful she hadn't felt all month. Outside her window, rain still tapped against the glass, each drop catching the cabin light like tiny sparks. Across the aisle, a man in his 50s unfolded a newspaper. A few rows back, someone spoke softly on the phone. A baby fussed. A suitcase thumped into an overhead bin. Just a normal flight. Alana closed her eyes. She breathed in the quiet until she felt a presence beside her. A shadow dimmed the light above her head. She opened her eyes to find Taylor, the same young attendant who had greeted her moments earlier. The smile was gone. In its place was that overly cautious look one Alana had learned to read with painful clarity. "Ma'am," Taylor began, voice soft but tense. "May I see your boarding pass again?" Alana blinked. It was not the first time she'd been asked, not the second, not the 10th. She handed over her ticket without a word. Taylor scanned it, hesitated, then looked at the seat number. Seat 1A. A tiny, apologetic crease appeared between the flight attendant's brows. "Oh, okay. Thank you," Taylor murmured. But her voice lacked confidence, almost like she'd expected something else. Taylor walked back toward the galley, leaving Alana with a quiet unease settling into her chest. Seconds passed, then a minute. Then Taylor returned, this time with a slightly older woman wearing a darker uniform and a gold name badge. Natalie, cabin manager. And that was the moment Alana felt it, the subtle shift in the air, the tightening in her stomach, the beginning of something she knew too well. Natalie leaned slightly toward her, polite but firm. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we may need you to move from this seat. We have a passenger with Legacy Elite status assigned to 1A, and he before she even finished." Alana felt her throat tighten, not from fear, but from sheer, worn-out disappointment. It was happening again. Again. Her voice stayed calm, steady, almost quiet. "This is my seat," she said. "Simple, clear, without anger." But as soon as the words left her lips, the entire energy of the cabin shifted. A businessman across the aisle looked up from his newspaper. A young woman froze mid-text. Even the baby's fussing seemed to fade into the background. There was something in Alana's voice, something controlled, something quietly strong that made the moment feel heavier than the space it occupied. Natalie pressed her lips together. "Yes, ma'am, I understand, but this specific seat is typically reserved." "Our system prioritized, I understand," Alana replied, her tone still soft. "But the seat printed on my boarding pass is 1A. I'll stay here. No anger, no raised voice, no threats. Just a truth delivered with the kind of steadiness that made some people uncomfortable." Natalie exhaled, a long, slow breath. "Let me check with the captain," she said. "Please wait here." As she walked away, passengers began whispering, glancing at Alana. glancing at the empty aisle, glancing at the front of the cabin, where two flight attendants now spoke in hushed voices. The tension grew like a slow tide rising against the shore, quiet, unstoppable. Alana closed her eyes again. Not tonight, she thought. Please, not tonight. But deep down, a familiar ache whispered the truth. This was not going to be an ordinary evening. This was not going to be an ordinary flight. And this time, she wasn't going to move. Not an inch. Not anymore. The cabin felt different after Natalie walked away. Not louder, not chaotic, just heavier, as if someone had quietly lowered a thick sheet of glass between Alana and the rest of the world. She sat still in her seat, hands folded in her lap, her fingers pressed together the way she always did when she needed to steady her breath. Outside the window, the rain had softened into a mist. Drops moved lazily down the glass, sliding in slow paths that blurred the runway lights into streaks of gold. She watched them for a moment, letting her focus rest on something simple. It was a habit she had learned years ago, when the world turned sharp, when attention pulled at her in ways that felt suffocating. She would ground herself with small things, a reflection on glass, a line of light, a quiet sound she could hold on to. Tonight, she needed all of it. The passengers nearby tried not to look, but curiosity tugged at them like a thread. A man across the aisle lowered his newspaper just an inch too far to be subtle. A woman several rows back whispered something that ended with a soft, disbelieving sigh. Even Taylor, the young attendant, kept glancing over as though torn between empathy and protocol. Alana had felt this before. The room, the quiet, the scrutiny. Every time something like this happened, she felt the same slow tightening inside her chest, as if the world expected her to be either fragile or furious, but never simply human. She blinked, her gaze drifting toward the ceiling as she breathed in again. She had spent her entire life walking into spaces where people questioned her presence before she even spoke. Boardrooms, conferences, fundraising dinners, and now airplanes, where a seat that belonged to her was treated like a mistake. The worst part was not the inconvenience. It was the familiarity. She leaned back and closed her eyes, letting her thoughts drift through the years. Her mind returned to a memory she wished she could forget. She had been 27, interviewing for a leadership role at a tech firm. The receptionist had handed her a clipboard and pointed toward a row of plastic chairs reserved for job applicants. When she explained she was actually the keynote speaker for the event, the receptionist froze, stammered an apology, and rushed to find the event director. It was not the first time Alana had been mistaken for someone who did not belong, and it would not be the last. Moments like that had built an invisible collection inside her, a quiet archive of misjudgments and assumptions, some tiny, some sharp, all of them shaping her in ways she never asked for. Tonight, another memory surfaced. She was 10, standing with her father in a hardware store. A cashier had followed them through the aisles, eyeing them with suspicion, even though her father still wore his scrubs from the hospital. She had asked him why the woman looked at them like that. Her father had knelt, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said gently, "Some people see only what they expect, not what is in front of them. Speak when needed, but never let them reach inside you." Alana opened her eyes again. She whispered under her breath, almost like a prayer meant only for herself. "Dad, I'm trying. I really am." A sudden shift of footsteps drew her attention. Natalie was returning, moving with the briskness of someone who had not gotten the answer she hoped for. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed frustration, not at Alana, but at the tangle she now had to navigate. She approached with careful steps. "Ma'am, thank you for your patience. We are still reviewing the seat assignment. The passenger with elite status is insisting that seat 1A is his usual position on this route." Alana nodded once. "I understand what he is used to." she said softly. "But I am not moving." The words floated into the space between them, gentle but rooted. There was no hostility, no defiance. There was simply certainty. And something in that calmness unsettled Natalie, because it removed any excuse to treat Alana as unreasonable. "I'll return shortly," Natalie said. She stepped away again. The pressure inside the cabin thickened until even the lights seemed to dim under it. Passengers shifted in their seats, unable to pretend the situation did not matter. A blonde woman seated in 1C exhaled loudly, as though speaking to no one and everyone at once. They should just let her stay. "She's clearly in the right seat," a man behind her responded. "Tell that to how airlines treat status." His tone carried irritation, but also resignation, like this was all predictable. Alana kept her eyes forward. The moment stretched long enough for doubt to whisper through her. Not doubt about the seat, doubt about the emotional cost of staying in it. She knew she could move. She had moved before. She had stepped aside for the sake of peace more times than she could count. But tonight, something in her refused. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the memory of her father's tired smile. Or maybe it was the quiet truth that she had earned this rest, this space, this small patch of dignity she refused to surrender. Another voice drifted in from a few rows back. "I've flown this route for years," a man said. "They always favor the same type of person." Someone else murmured, "It feels different this time." "She's not budging." Alana wondered whether they saw her as brave or difficult. Maybe both. Taylor approached again, holding a small silver tray with a glass of water. Her expression had softened. "Here you go, Dr. Pierce. Just some water while things get sorted." "Thank you," Alana said. She appreciated the gesture more than she let on. Taylor lingered a moment. She lowered her voice just enough so no one else could hear. "I'm sorry this is happening." It was a quiet confession, almost fragile. Alana's gaze met hers. "I imagine it's not entirely your fault." Taylor's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Still, it shouldn't be this way." Her eyes glistened for a fraction of a second before she stepped back to her duties. Alana held the water in her hands, watching the condensation gather near her fingertips. She wondered how many times Taylor had seen something like this, how many times she had been told to enforce a rule that wasn't written anywhere, a rule that lived only in people's habits. A deep voice echoed from the entryway. "Is everything sorted yet?" The Legacy Elite passenger had arrived. A tall man with silvering hair and an expensive watch stepped into the cabin with the confidence of someone who rarely heard the word no. He glanced once at Alana, his eyes flicking over her coat, her skin, her calm posture. Then he looked at seat 1A. "That's my seat," he announced casually, as if speaking a simple fact of life. Alana didn't move. She didn't flinch. She just met his gaze with quiet clarity. "No, sir," she said. "It isn't." The man blinked. Once. Then again. Slower than the first time. Her certainty unsettled him. It was not delivered with challenge. It was delivered with truth. And truth had a way of cracking the foundation beneath certainty. Before he could respond, Natalie brushed past him, carrying an iPad in her hand with a tight expression. "Captain wants to speak with you," she said to him. "Now." The man hesitated, then followed her toward the cockpit. Alana exhaled. She did not smile. She did not relax. But for the first time since boarding, she felt the faintest flicker of something warm. Her boundaries were still intact. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, soft enough that she could finally see the runway lights again, glowing in long bright lines that stretched into the night. For a moment, she let herself imagine landing in New York with no further trouble, meeting Monique at the cafe, laughing over strong coffee the way they used to, feeling normal, feeling whole. That hope held her steady, but deep inside, she sensed that the night wasn't done with her yet. Not by far. The aircraft doors remained open. The cabin air grew tense again. A quiet storm was gathering in the narrow walkway leading to her seat, and she could feel its approach even before anyone returned. Something was coming, and this time, she would not bend. Not now. Not again. Not for anyone. The minutes after the Legacy Elite passenger disappeared into the cockpit moved strangely, stretching yet trembling at the edges, like a string pulled too tight. No one spoke. No one dared to shift too loudly in their seat. The first-class cabin seemed caught between breaths, waiting for something to snap or soften. Alana stayed still. She kept her eyes on the slow dance of lights outside, blinking against the faint ache building behind her temples. Everything in the cabin felt sharper. Every whisper prickled. Every glance carried weight. The air itself felt charged, as though the plane sensed a line had been drawn in its aisle and did not know how to step around it. Behind her, someone murmured, almost under their breath, "This is getting out of hand." Another voice answered. It got out of hand the second they questioned her seat. If Alana heard them, she didn't show it. Years of practice helped her create a space inside herself, a quiet pocket untouched by opinions or pressure. She drifted into that pocket now, letting her breath become the only constant thing. Footsteps approached again. Taylor appeared near her armrest with a nervous tightness in her posture. She wasn't carrying water this time. Her hands were empty, and that worried Alana more than she expected. Empty hands meant she hadn't come to offer comfort. She had come to receive something, or deliver something she wished she didn't have to say. "Dr. Pierce," she whispered. Alana looked up. "Yes." "The captain is still assessing the situation." Assessing. Such a simple word for a process that too often meant stalling until someone in the room with more privilege felt satisfied. "Thank you," Alana replied. Taylor stayed there a moment, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She seemed torn between duty and conscience, and the conflict softened her face in a way that touched Alana unexpectedly. "If you need anything," Taylor added quietly, "I'm here." It was a small sentence, a simple one, but it felt like a hand reaching out in a room where no one else wanted to be the first to move. Alana nodded. "I appreciate that." Taylor walked away slowly, as if she wished she could stay but knew she shouldn't. The cabin returned to its uncomfortable hush. Just as Alana began to settle again, the man in 1C leaned slightly into the aisle. His voice was low, careful, respectful. "Ma'am, I hope you stay right where you are. This isn't right." His tone wasn't sharp or heroic. It was weary, like someone who had watched too many moments like this pass without change. Alana turned her head, offering him a small gentle acknowledgement. "Thank you." Her voice held a softness she rarely allowed strangers to hear. But tonight was different. Tonight, she knew she was being watched by more than the people on this plane. She was being watched by her past, by memories that echoed, by the quiet resilience she had carried her entire life. A click sounded near the front of the cabin. Natalie reappeared, moving with tighter restraint. Her shoulders were rigid now, the kind of stiffness that suggested the conversation with the captain had not gone easily. She paused near the curtain, taking a breath before approaching Alana. This time, she didn't try to mask her discomfort. "Dr. Pierce," she said, "we are experiencing a seating discrepancy for 1A. The captain has asked that you temporarily relocate to seat 5C until we." Alana's gaze lifted slowly. Not with sharpness, not with challenge, with clarity. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I am staying in this seat." The simplicity of the statement seemed to ripple through the cabin, as though the walls themselves listened. Natalie pressed her lips together. "Ma'am, this seat is assigned to a high-status traveler who occupies it on every flight of this route." "He has requested I understand what he has requested," Alana said softly. But this seat was assigned to me. I will not be moving." The firmness in her voice was not loud. It did not need volume. It carried something deeper, something grounded, the kind of truth that did not need defense. Natalie inhaled slowly. "The captain needs this resolve before we close the doors. Then he needs to resolve it correctly." Alana replied, "I have done nothing wrong." Her words rolled through the cabin like a gentle tremor, and for a moment, no one knew how to respond. Natalie opened her mouth, hesitated, then closed it again. Alana watched her with empathy she didn't expect to feel. She knew Natalie was not the villain. She was the messenger of a system built long before her, a system that rewarded familiarity and punished perceived intrusion, a system that bowed easily to tradition even when that tradition hurt people. But knowing that did not make the moment easier. It only made it sadder. Natalie stepped back, eyes darting toward the galley as though seeking support. Alana could almost feel the struggle inside the woman's mind. Procedure versus fairness, expectation versus conscience. Before Natalie could move, the Legacy Elite passenger re-entered the cabin. His jaw was tight now, the casual arrogance replaced by visible frustration. He walked directly to Natalie and spoke in a hushed but urgent tone. "This is absurd. I always sit there. Tell her to move." His eyes flicked sideways at Alana, as if she were furniture and not a person. Alana kept her expression still. Natalie looked strained, pressed between two immovable truths, her passenger's status and the evidence on the ticket in Alana's hand. "Sir," she said carefully, "Dr. Pierce is in the seat assigned to her by our system." The man scoffed quietly. "You cannot be serious. This is 1A. That seat is mine on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday flight. Everyone knows that." Alana felt a cold, familiar sadness settle into her chest. The entitlement in his voice wasn't loud or vicious. It was worse than that. It was casual. It assumed agreement. It assumed compliance. It assumed she was wrong even before facts were considered. She sat a little straighter. "Sir," she said, her tone still steady, "I have no interest in your usual routine. I have no argument with you. But this seat, this one right here, is mine tonight." The man let out a short, disbelieving laugh. He turned back toward Natalie. "You see what I mean? This is turning into a situation." A murmur traveled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "The situation started with him, not her." He ignored it. Alana exhaled quietly, a long, slow breath that seemed to flow from a place deep within her, a place layered with years of patience stretched thin in that breath. She felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected tonight. Resolve. Not born from anger, born from truth. She looked again at the window, watching the mist thicken outside. How many times had she surrendered for peace? How many times had she told herself that moving away from small battles kept her strong for larger ones? Tonight, her strength felt different. It felt necessary. Natalie stepped aside, pulling the man with her toward the front of the cabin. They spoke in quick, tense whispers. Every passenger was watching now. Even the murmuring baby had grown quiet, as if sensing the charged air. Alana folded her hands again, palms warm against each other. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew she would not move, not from fear, not from weariness, but from a place inside her that had been waiting its whole life for a moment like this. The moment the cabin shifted again, she felt it before she heard it. The sound of a handset being lifted, a soft murmur from the cockpit, then footsteps, then something else, something she could not yet name. But she sensed the night beginning to bend toward her in a way she had never experienced. And whatever was coming, it would change more than the seat beneath her. The cabin lights dimmed a little as the flight attendants adjusted the overhead settings, yet the room felt brighter in its tension. It was the kind of brightness that didn't come from bulbs or lamps, but from the charged, watchful attention of too many people holding their breath at once. Alana felt it settling on her shoulders. She didn't shrink under it. She simply breathed, slow and steady, palms resting together in her lap, her body held in calm alignment. She sensed movement near the front of the cabin, soft voices, a faint shift of fabric. Someone clearing their throat. Small details carried louder when everything else stood still. Her heartbeat stayed slow. It always did when moments felt too big to grasp. Her mind entered a quiet place, the same place she visited during high-stakes negotiations or when she stood on stage delivering keynotes to thousands of listeners. But this time, the quiet came with a weight pressing gently on her ribs, a reminder. You didn't choose this moment, but now it's yours to hold. Taylor reappeared near the curtain, not approaching her directly, but hovering just close enough that Alana sensed she was waiting for permission to speak. Their eyes met. Taylor stepped forward. "Dr. Pierce," she whispered. "The captain asked if you'd be willing to come to the front for a brief conversation." Alana tilted her head gently, studying the young woman's expression. "Is it a requirement?" Her tone was soft, neither defensive nor hostile, simply searching for clarity. Taylor swallowed. Not officially, but it would help the situation. Help the situation. Words that were meant to soothe, but often meant something else entirely. Words used to keep the peace, even when the peace meant someone had to bend. Alana felt the familiar tug inside her, the urge to comply, the instinct to smooth things over, to minimize friction, to protect everyone from discomfort, even if that discomfort was not hers to carry. But the tug passed quickly. She shook her head gently. "I'd prefer to remain here." Her voice carried the weight of her lived experience without raising the volume. Taylor nodded slowly, as if absorbing that choice into her own heart. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll let them know." She stepped away. Alana's gaze drifted back to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the glass streaked but clear. The airport runway glowed like a distant promise stretching toward the horizon. She could almost imagine herself already in New York, already seated across from Monique, already laughing about something small and ordinary. Her chest tightened with longing. She needed that morning. She needed that quiet. Another wave of murmurs rolled through the cabin. This time, it came from passengers leaning toward each other, speaking in hushed tones that carried a bewildered mix of sympathy and discomfort. Can they really make her leave? Is this even allowed? I've never seen something like this before. Alana heard it all without reacting. Then the voice from 1C returned, gentle but firm. "You're doing the right thing." She glanced at him, offering another subtle nod. "It doesn't always feel that way," she replied quietly. He softened. "It rarely does." Before she could answer, Natalie stepped back into view. This time, her expression was different, more guarded, more pressed at the edges. She approached with slow, deliberate steps, the kind of steps taken by someone trying to keep their voice steady. "Dr. Pierce," she said carefully, "we need to resolve this before we depart. The captain has reviewed the manifest, and there appears to be a problem with the system assigning seat 1A. Alana waited. She let the silence rest between them. Natalie's throat tightened. He is concerned that continuing the flight with the dispute unresolved could escalate. A quiet pulse of disbelief rippled through the cabin. Alana's voice remained even. "Escalation doesn't come from me." "I know," Natalie whispered. "But he has to consider every passenger's comfort and the airline's operations. And mine." The question slipped out gently, but it struck harder than any raised tone. Natalie paused. The hesitation was answer enough. Alana looked down at her hands. Her fingers curled together in thought. A memory surfaced of her mother teaching her how to braid her sister's hair. She had told her then. When the world doesn't make space for you, make space inside yourself first. The world catches up slowly. Maybe this moment wasn't about resisting the seat. Maybe it was about claiming the space inside her that she had spent a lifetime preserving. She looked up again. "I am not moving from this seat," she said quietly. Her voice wavered just slightly, not from weakness, but from depth. Respectfully, I have honored every request made to me. I boarded early. I showed my pass. I stayed calm. I did everything asked of me. But this seat was assigned to me. I belong here tonight. Her voice fell into a hush. That is all. Natalie closed her eyes briefly, as though absorbing the weight of those words. The Legacy Elite passenger stepped forward again. His jaw twitched with irritation. What are we even doing? He looked directly at Natalie. We're wasting everyone's time. She should move. Alana met his gaze with calm stillness. Sir, she said, I'm not denying you comfort. I'm simply refusing to disappear. He blinked, caught off guard by the gentle clarity of her words. Natalie raised a hand to signal him to wait, then leaned closer to Alana. The captain is considering removing both of you from the flight if we cannot reach an agreement. The cabin shifted again, a sound like air tightening in the walls. Someone gasped softly. Someone else muttered under their breath, and several passengers began shaking their heads, their expressions turning from curiosity to disbelief. Alana let out a long breath. She felt something inside her settle like a stone finding its place at the bottom of a river. Heavy, but grounded, unmovable. The idea of being removed from the flight was not new to her. It had happened once before, years ago. For a misunderstanding she never received an apology for it. But tonight, the weight of that threat struck her differently. She thought of Monique waiting in Brooklyn with coffee. She thought of her father's quiet words. She thought of every moment she had surrendered for the sake of peace. A soft voice rose from behind her. This is unacceptable. The woman in 2A leaned forward, her eyes fierce with indignation. She paid for that seat. You cannot move her because someone else wants it. Another passenger chimed in. Let her stay. This has gone too far. Even the man behind the Legacy Elite passenger spoke. You should be embarrassed. She's done nothing wrong. Their voices created a strange, fragile chorus. Not loud, not forceful, but deeply human. Alana felt something warm bloom in her chest. She didn't smile. Not fully, but her eyes softened. Natalie looked around, suddenly aware of the shifting mood. Her posture tightened as she turned toward the cockpit again. The airline was losing the room, and she knew it. A minute passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, the captain stepped into view. The cabin stilled instantly. His expression was unreadable, controlled, firm, carrying the weight of authority and responsibility. He approached slowly, his gaze moving between Alana, the Legacy Elite passenger, and the watching eyes of everyone behind them. Dr. Pierce, he said, his voice steady. We have reviewed the seating conflict and the system error. He paused, but before we make a final decision, I need to ask you something directly. Alana lifted her chin slightly. Go ahead. His eyes held hers. Is there any reason you chose seat 1A tonight that would prevent you from relocating to another first-class seat? The question hung in the air like a shard of glass catching the light. Alana inhaled deeply, feeling the truth rise in her like a tide she could no longer contain. Yes, she said softly. There is. Every passenger leaned in. Even the air felt suspended. Alana continued, her voice carrying the quiet gravity of a truth held too long. I chose this seat because I am tired. And for once, I refuse to give up the space I rightfully earned. Her words settled over the cabin like a quiet bell tone, vibrating long after the sound had faded. The captain blinked, surprised by the simplicity and depth of her answer. Before he could respond, a chime sounded from the cockpit. He turned slightly, as if listening to a voice over the intercom. Then everything shifted. The captain's expression changed. He straightened. "Dr. Pierce," he said carefully, "it appears there is new information that concerns you directly." Alana felt the hairs on her arms rise. New information. Concerning her. A ripple of unease traveled through her body. The night was about to turn, and she sensed it would turn sharply. The captain's words drifted into the cabin like a cold draft slipping through a cracked door. New information. Concerning her. Alana felt every muscle in her body still, as if preparing for a blow she could not yet see. The captain motioned for Natalie to bring the tablet she carried. She hesitated, then handed it to him. The glow from the screen lit his face in a pale blue tint, sharpening the lines around his eyes. He studied the display for a few silent seconds. When he finally looked up, his voice had changed. Not softer, not harsher, but heavier, as though he now carried a truth he could not ignore. "Dr. Pierce, I need to confirm something with you directly." His tone carried a level of intent that made the entire cabin lean in. Alana kept her voice steady. "What is it?" He turned the tablet slightly, as if debating whether to show her the screen. Then he lowered it again, choosing his words carefully. "Our system just received a cross-verification notice from corporate dispatch. It appears that your name is flagged in the Executive Profile Registry of Pierce Neural Systems." The cabin fell into a new kind of silence. Not tense, not curious, something deeper, something teetering between disbelief and realization. A few passengers exchanged glances. Whispering in confusion, someone behind her murmured, "Pierce Neural Systems." Did he say Pierce? But Alana did not shift. She stayed exactly as she was, her eyes calm but alert. "Yes," she answered softly. "That is correct." The captain blinked, twice. Then he spoke again, slower this time. "You are the founder of that company." Her answer was gentle, almost apologetic. "I am." A wave of whispers rolled across the cabin like a soft gust of wind. The businessman in 1C lowered his newspaper completely, staring at her with surprise that bordered on awe. The woman in 2A pressed a hand to her chest. Even the Legacy Elite passenger exhaled sharply, as if the information struck him physically. For a moment, it was not the seat that defined her in their eyes, it was who she was, or rather, who they had never imagined she could be. Natalie cleared her throat, her voice trembling slightly. "Ma'am, I didn't realize. You weren't supposed to," Alana replied gently. "My title isn't printed on my ticket." Her kindness unsettled the cabin more than anger would have. The Legacy Elite passenger stepped forward again, but this time his posture lacked confidence. "Wait," he said, trying to regain footing. "You're telling me she owns that company?" His voice cracked in the middle. Alana didn't look at him. She simply nodded once. The captain let out a long breath. "There's more," he added. "The system also lists you as a partner in SkyVista's neural safety contract. This time," the cabin reacted. Someone whispered, "She works with the airline." Another voice answered, "Works with them. She helps build their tech." Even before anyone processed the full weight of the captain's statement, the truth was already shifting the air. Taylor returned from the galley with wide eyes, carrying nothing this time, just standing near the aisle as though trying to absorb the moment. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Dr. Pierce, you're the one who designed the adaptive fail-safe network." Alana exhaled softly. "I led the team." "Yes." Taylor's face softened with something like quiet reverence. "My brother read an article about you last month. He said you were changing the way air systems think." A few passengers nodded slowly, recognition forming in their expressions. Her name was known, but only in the circles that paid attention to technology, ethics, and innovation. In the wider world, she was invisible, just another traveler moving through airports like a shadow. The captain lowered the tablet to his side, clearing his throat again. Dr. Pierce, given your involvement with our operational systems, I'm not sure how this conflict happened at all. I am, she replied gently, and her voice carried a quiet ache. The cabin seemed to lean closer, sensing something important beneath her words. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. The Legacy Elite passenger shifted his weight from one foot to the other, visibly unsettled. His face was flushed, and he lifted his chin in a gesture that looked more like self-preservation than pride. Look, he muttered, I didn't know who you were. Alana finally turned her face toward him. Her eyes reflected tiredness, not triumph. Sir, she said softly, I never asked you to. The raw honesty in her tone pierced the tension like a pin through fragile glass. The passenger's mouth fell slightly open, but no words followed. He stepped back, almost as if distance could soften the shame rising in his chest. The captain let out a breath that felt like a release. Dr. Pierce, under these circumstances, your seat is not in question. You will remain in 1A for the duration of the flight. A quiet wave of approval moved through the cabin. A few passengers nodded. Someone exhaled loudly in relief, but the captain wasn't finished. Before we close the doors, there is one more matter I need to address. His tone made the entire cabin fall still again. The air tightened. Even the hum of the engine seemed to quiet in anticipation. The captain stepped closer, lowering his voice but speaking clearly enough for the surrounding rows to hear. Our corporate dispatch also relayed a real-time update. Your name triggered an internal notification protocol. The board of Sky Vista has requested confirmation of your presence on this specific aircraft. Alana frowned slightly. Why would they do that? The captain hesitated, choosing his next words as if they were fragile in his hands. It appears, he said slowly, that your system access credentials were activated 20 minutes ago from ground control, and that activation granted you the authority to override operational sequences across the fleet. The cabin reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers, a ripple of shock. Alana stared at the captain, taken aback. I didn't authorize anything. I know, he said quickly. The system shows that the activation wasn't triggered manually. It was pre-coded, a safety measure linked to your identity. It initiates automatically in situations where there is a discrepancy regarding your travel status. The realization hit her slowly, like a dawn spreading across a quiet horizon. Her team had built an automated protection protocol years ago, a system safeguard meant to activate if her access permissions were ever questioned or manipulated during travel. It was designed to prevent exploitation, hacking, or misuse of her identity. She never expected she would be the one to trigger it, especially not over a seat. Especially not like this, passengers murmured, their voices filled with confusion. What does that mean? Why would she need a protocol? What is happening? The captain continued, Dr. Pierce, this automatic activation has temporarily placed a soft freeze on all aircraft using your company's navigation augmentation system. That includes 145 planes currently on the ground. The whispers exploded into stunned silence. Alana's breath caught. Her voice was barely audible. 145. Yes. Just grounded temporarily until the system confirms your identity clearance. Once you approve it, the freeze will release immediately. She closed her eyes for a moment. Her calm, long protected, wavered for the first time that night. So with two taps from a system she designed long ago, a quiet protection protocol had just halted one of the largest airline networks in the country. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because the system recognized something the cabin had struggled to. Her presence mattered. Her dignity mattered. And tonight, the world would not move forward until she was treated as such. When she opened her eyes again, the cabin no longer felt heavy. It felt awake. The captain spoke again, gently this time. "We need your confirmation to release the freeze. But before that, I want you to know, this should have never escalated like this." Alana inhaled deeply. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Show me the verification prompt." The captain handed her the tablet. The screen glowed softly in her hands. 2 buttons waited. Confirm identity. Release freeze. 2 taps. The entire cabin leaned in as though witnessing the beginning of something much larger than the woman sitting quietly in seat 1A. Alana's finger hovered for a long, silent moment. And then, slowly, gracefully, she tapped once, then once more. The cabin exhaled, and the night shifted again. The moment Alana completed the second tap, the tablet released a soft chime that traveled across the cabin like the first ring of a bell in a silent church. It was gentle, almost delicate, but it carried a weight everyone could feel. A notification appeared on the screen, confirming the release of the freeze. System identity verified. Operational clearance restored. All grounded aircraft resuming standard pre-flight procedures. The captain exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding his breath for the entire duration of the event. The tension in his shoulders eased, though not completely. He was still absorbing the fact that one woman, sitting calmly in the front row, had just halted and restarted a major segment of the airline's fleet with 2 precise movements. He took the tablet back with both hands, carefully, as though handling something sacred. "Thank you, Dr. Pierce," he said softly. "The issue is fully resolved now." Alana nodded, but didn't speak. She could still feel the hum of the system beneath her fingertips, a faint tremor inside her chest. It wasn't fear or relief. It was something more complicated, something that sat in the center of her being, neither rising nor sinking, just present, a truth that could no longer be pushed to the side. She looked out the window again. The rain had finished entirely, leaving the glass clear and still. The runway lights shone bright and steady, undisturbed by the storm that had just passed inside the cabin. Behind her, a soft murmur ran through the passengers. Not frantic, not panicked, just stunned. One person whispered, "She grounded 100 planes." Another answered, "She saved them too." Someone further back added, "All because they questioned her seat." Their voices held awe and discomfort in equal measure, not because of the power they'd witnessed, but because the power had come from someone they hadn't expected, someone they almost overlooked. Alana folded her hands again, feeling the warmth return to her palms. Her breath settled into a slow, steady rhythm. She sensed eyes on her from every direction. But she didn't flinch. She had lived enough life to know when attention came from curiosity, and when it came from recognition. Tonight, the shift felt profound. The captain turned to the Legacy Elite passenger, who stood stiffly near the front, his confidence splintered by the events unfolding around him. "Sir," he said, "your seat assignment will remain 3A for this flight." The man didn't argue. Not this time. He simply nodded with an awkward stiffness and returned to his row, sitting down without a word. The absence of resistance was not humility. It was shock dressed in silence. Natalie approached Alana slowly. Her face softened in a way that felt sincere, stripped of protocol. "Dr. Pierce, I want to apologize." Her voice trembled slightly, and she pressed her hands together to keep them still. "I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know who you were. I just followed what I thought was procedure." Alana met her eyes with a steady gentleness. "Natalie," she said, "you don't owe me an apology because of my title." Her voice softened even more. "But you do owe me one because I was treated as if I did not belong." The cabin fell silent. Natalie swallowed, her eyes glistening. "You're right, and I am truly sorry for that." Alana nodded once, accepting the words without bitterness. There was a pause, one that stretched long enough for passengers to let out slow breaths they didn't realize they were holding. Taylor approached next, but she didn't speak right away. Her eyes shimmered with something deeper than apology, something like respect or gratitude. "Dr. Pierce," she said gently, "thank you for how you handled this. You stayed calm in a moment that would have broken many people." Alana gave a small smile. "Believe me," she murmured. "It almost did." The honesty in her voice pierced through the room. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was simply true. The captain signaled the flight attendants to prepare for departure. The hum of the engines grew stronger as the aircraft began its final checks. Passengers adjusted their seatbelts, glanced around, and settled into the reality that the night was moving forward after all. But Alana felt herself drifting inward again, even after the drama, even after the truth had unfolded. She sensed a heaviness in her chest that hadn't lifted with the freeze. She knew why. Power had never been the point. Dignity was. But tonight had forced those two things to collide in a way she hadn't prepared for. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythms of the engine steady her thoughts. Images drifted through her mind. Faces she had met, rooms she had entered, conversations where she had smiled through discomfort because she didn't want to disrupt the peace. Her father's voice echoed softly. "When you find yourself in a moment that demands you stand still, do not step aside just to make others comfortable. Space belongs to you, too." She saw him as clearly as if he were sitting beside her, his kind eyes, his steady warmth, his unwavering belief in her. She whispered into the quiet, "I didn't mean to cause trouble." A faint hum answered her. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't her memory. It was the plane itself, gently vibrating beneath her palms, reminding her that sometimes trouble is simply truth, trying to make room for itself. When she opened her eyes again, the cabin had settled. The lights dimmed to a soft glow. Passengers had returned to their seats fully, some typing messages, some staring out windows, some simply thinking. The energy had shifted entirely. Then she heard it, a soft, hesitant voice behind her. "Dr. Pierce." She turned slightly. A young man in 2C leaned forward. His hands were clasped together, and his expression carried a mixture of curiosity and something like admiration. "I just wanted to say, that was one of the most dignified things I've ever seen." Alana gave him a gentle nod. "Thank you." He relaxed a little, then added, "I hope you know, you changed something tonight." His voice trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of sincerity. "I didn't intend to," she said quietly. "I only held my place." He smiled sadly. "Sometimes that's enough to move the world." Alana turned back to her window, letting his words settle into the quiet space she kept inside herself. The engines roared a little stronger as the aircraft prepared for takeoff. Taylor made one final walk through the aisle. When she reached Alana, she paused, her voice a whisper. "If there's anything you need during the flight, anything at all, please let me know." Alana looked up, warmth touching her eyes. "I will." "Thank you." "Taylor." The young attendant gave a small nod and moved on. The captain's voice came over the speakers, calm and composed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for departure. Thank you for your patience this evening." The aircraft began to roll, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. The runway lights slid past the windows in long glowing lines. The plane lifted, rising into the night sky. As the city lights fell away beneath them, Alana rested her head back. Her seat felt different now, not heavier, not lighter, just claimed, not because of authority, not because of power, but because she refused to move. Tonight had changed something in her too, a quiet shift, a reclaiming, and she wasn't sure where that shift would lead. But she could feel the world listening now. and she knew the night had more to reveal. The plane climbed steadily, leaving the glowing edges of Seattle behind. The night sky opened its vast, quiet arms around the aircraft, wrapping it in a dark stillness broken only by the soft hum of engines and the occasional rustle of passengers settling into their seats. Yet inside, Alana felt anything but still. The turbulence wasn't in the air. It lived inside her. As the aircraft leveled off, she let out a breath she didn't remember holding. The cabin lights dimmed to a warm amber, casting gentle reflections across the curved walls. For the first time since stepping aboard, the atmosphere felt almost peaceful. Not the heavy, suppressed sort of quiet from earlier, but something more natural, something earned. Still, her chest held an ache she could not name. She rested her fingertips lightly on the armrest, feeling the vibration of the engines through the metal and fabric. It grounded her, kept her thoughts from drifting too far into the storm that had passed, or the storm still forming. Minutes stretched in a soft rhythm as the sky outside deepened into thicker darkness. Then she heard a soft voice. Dr. Pierce. It came from her left. The older man in 1C, the one who'd spoken earlier, leaned slightly toward her. His expression carried a gentleness that felt fatherly, though not intrusive. "I hope you don't mind me saying this," he began. She turned her head slightly, inviting him to continue. "What you did tonight, it was remarkable." Her gaze lowered. "I didn't feel remarkable." He smiled softly, the corners of his eyes creasing. "That's usually when it matters most." His words touched something fragile inside her. She didn't trust her voice yet, so she nodded instead. The man continued, speaking quietly so others wouldn't overhear. "You carried yourself with a grace I don't see often, not when someone is under that much pressure." She searched his face, wondering what made him reach out now. When the moment had already passed, he answered her unspoken question with a gentle breath. "My daughter is your age," he said. "If she had been in your place, I hope she would have had your strength." Something tightened in her chest, a warmth mixed with sadness. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded once and leaned back, giving her space as if understanding she still needed it. The quiet returned, softer this time. For several minutes, she watched the subtle flicker of stars outside the window. She imagined the world below, the grounded planes now preparing to take to the skies again. She pictured the control centers adjusting schedules, pilots stepping back into cockpits, crew members resetting routines, all because of a safety protocol she once designed on a rainy morning long ago, a protocol she had almost forgotten. She pressed a hand to her sternum, letting the warmth spread through her palm. She could not escape the truth forming inside her. Something needed to change, not just in her company, not just in the airline, in herself. The soft sound of footsteps approached. Taylor appeared again, holding a small cup of herbal tea. She stopped beside Alana with a gentle tilt of her head. "I thought this might help," she whispered. Alana looked up, the corners of her mouth softening. "Thank you, Taylor." Her voice carried more warmth than before. Taylor lingered for a moment, as though wanting to say something more. Eventually, the words found her. "I hope you know we're not all like that." She swallowed, her eyes shimmering. "Some of us, we really try." Alana reached for the tea, her fingers grazing Taylor's lightly. "I know," she said gently, "and I'm grateful for you." Taylor's throat tightened. "If you need anything, I'm right here." She stepped away, her posture more grounded now, as if the evening had changed her too. Alana wrapped both hands around the warm cup. The scent of chamomile drifted upward, soft and soothing. She inhaled the gentle steam, letting it fill the space inside her that still felt shaken. The aircraft glided through a patch of mild turbulence, a small tremor that rippled through the cabin. Some passengers shifted, some tightened their seatbelts. Alana didn't move. She felt strangely anchored, even as the plane dipped slightly. Then a soft chime sounded from the overhead speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We'll be turning off the seatbelt sign in a few minutes. The skies ahead look smooth." The tone in his voice carried a hint of something unspoken, something like acknowledgement. Not an apology, not a statement, just quiet recognition. Alana's breath slowed. She sipped her tea, feeling it warm the back of her throat. Just as she set the cup down, a realization rose inside her like a tide rising in the dark, a gentle, unfamiliar force tugging at her. She had spent her whole life walking into rooms where she had to prove she belonged. Even tonight, the truth only surfaced when the world discovered her credentials. But she was tired of that, tired of being validated only by the weight of her achievements, tired of having to be extraordinary just to receive ordinary respect. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, memories played like a soft film. Times she'd stepped aside, times she'd swallowed her hurt, times she'd smiled through dismissal, times she'd allowed the world to be small around her so she wouldn't make others uncomfortable. A question rose from somewhere deep inside her chest. When did I become accustomed to shrinking? The question felt like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything she thought she understood about herself. Another voice spoke in her memory. Her mother's this time. Gentle, steady, sure. Do not let the world convince you that humility means disappearing. Her breath caught. She leaned her head back. The ache inside her chest didn't feel heavy now. It felt illuminating, like a lantern inside her ribs. The cabin had quieted even further. A few passengers were asleep. Some watched movies. A few still cast quiet glances toward her, though not with discomfort now. With something closer to respect, she allowed herself to rest in that for a moment. Then the passenger across the aisle, the woman in 2A, leaned forward slightly. "Dr. Pierce." Her voice was calm, respectful, almost timid. Alana turned her head. "I just wanted to say thank you." Her fingers twisted in her blanket slightly. "I've had moments where I wanted to stand my ground, but didn't know how. Watching you tonight, it meant more than you know." Alana felt her breath deepen. She nodded softly. "I'm glad you found something in it." The woman's eyes glistened. "You didn't raise your voice. You didn't argue. You didn't try to humiliate anyone. You just stood in your truth." Alana felt her throat constrict with quiet emotion. "Some truths have waited a long time," she replied. The woman smiled, a small, trembling smile. "Sometimes that's how change starts." The words echoed inside Alana long after the woman leaned back. Change? Not the kind built from innovation or code, not the kind achieved in conferences or boardrooms, the kind that began in the quiet corners of a person's heart when they finally chose themselves. She rested her hand over her chest again, her fingers curling gently against the warmth of her body. The plane continued through the night sky, steady and sure, and slowly, almost imperceptibly. Something inside her began to settle, not into comfort, but into clarity. She didn't yet know where this clarity would lead, or what conversations it would demand, or how deeply it would reshape her life. But she felt it awakening. Not loud, not urgent, just present, and she sensed the night had not finished unfolding its truths. The sky outside looked almost still, but she knew better. Stillness often meant that something was coming, something that would change everything. The cabin had fallen into a gentle, drowsy hush, soft breathing, muted whispers, and the distant hum of engines blended into a kind of nighttime lullaby for travelers suspended thousands of feet above the earth. The amber cabin lights glowed faintly, casting warm shadows that swayed with the movement of the aircraft. But Alana was still wide awake. Sleep felt impossible after the night she had endured. Something in her chest remained open, stirred, unable to close again. She sipped what remained of her tea, now only lukewarm, and let the faint bitterness settle on her tongue. She placed the empty cup on the small tray and leaned back, her gaze drifting toward the window. The night sky looked endless, wrapped in layers of deep blue and soft black. The stars seemed steady, almost patient, as if they waited for her to gather herself. Her tablet rested quietly in the seat pocket. She hadn't touched it since earlier, but a part of her felt drawn to it again, not out of fear, not out of responsibility, but because she sensed the world had begun to move outside the cabin, responding to ripples she had not intended to create. She reached for it gently, the cool surface pressing into her palms. When she woke the screen, a flood of notifications appeared instantly. Dozens, then hundreds. She blinked, taken aback. The system flashed a single, insistent message. Director Keating requests immediate contact. Urgent. Alana's breath caught in her throat. Director Keating was not a man who used the word urgent without reason. He oversaw corporate compliance across 3 continents. His voice rarely carried emotion, but his decisions shaped entire industries. The fact that he was trying to reach her now, mid-flight, told her that the world outside had reacted faster than she imagined. She hesitated. The plane hummed softly. Passengers slumbered in quiet rows. A steady calm filled the air. She felt cocooned in silence, reluctant to break it, but she knew she couldn't ignore this. Her finger hovered, then tapped the message. A secure channel opened. His face appeared on the screen. He was seated in what looked like his office, dim lights behind him casting long shadows across shelves of thick binders and framed certificates. His tie was slightly loosened, something she had never seen before. His expression carried a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Alana," he began, his tone softer than she expected. "I trust you're somewhere safe." She nodded, keeping her voice low. "I'm en route to Washington. I assume you've seen the alert." He gave a slow exhale, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Seen it?" He shook his head. "Alana, it's everywhere." Her heartbeat stumbled. "What do you mean, everywhere?" He leaned closer to the camera. "Footage from your cabin leaked 30 minutes ago. Some passenger was filming before the freeze took effect. It's already spreading across social platforms. News outlets are picking it up in real time." Alana closed her eyes for a brief moment. Of course, someone had recorded it. In today's world, moments like this rarely stayed quiet. Keating continued. "People are calling it the first corporate freeze triggered mid-flight. And more than that," he paused, his voice lowering. "They're talking about how you were treated before it happened." A faint ache tightened in her ribs. She whispered, "I didn't want this to become a spectacle." He nodded, his expression softening. "I know. Anyone who knows you understands that. But the world doesn't operate on intention. It reacts to impact." Alana looked down at her hands, fingers interlacing slowly. "What's the situation on the ground?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. 3 airports have already requested statements. The Federal Oversight Board wants confirmation of your status, and SkyVista is preparing a public release. Though it's incomplete, they won't move without your approval." She lifted her head slightly. "What about the freeze?" He gave a small, weary nod, restored fully. "Maintenance teams are rechecking every plane as a precaution. But the real issue isn't the technology, it's the narrative." She felt the weight of that word settling over her. Narrative. He folded his hands. "Alana, you didn't just halt a fleet tonight. You've opened a question people have been afraid to confront, and it's spreading faster than we can contain." She inhaled deeply, the air cool in her lungs. "You're saying this goes beyond a protocol activation. It already has." Another silence passed. She let it stretch, needing the space it offered. "Finally," he asked, "what do you want to do?" Her throat tightened. No one had asked her that tonight. not even herself. She looked out the window again. The vastness outside seemed to wait patiently for her answer. She finally replied, "I need time to think. Let the night settle. When we land, we handle this with clarity." Keating nodded. "Take your time, but be ready. This is bigger than any of us anticipated." The call ended. The screen dimmed, returning to its gentle glow. She sat still, staring ahead, letting the weight of the moment sink beneath her skin. She felt the echoes of earlier events rising again, scattered pieces drifting into place. A soft voice came from her right. "Dr. Pierce." The older man at once he spoke again, though this time with even more care. "Are you all right?" She turned toward him. Her voice came out quieter than she expected. "Not entirely." He nodded, as if he had known she would say that. "You don't have to be strong every second," he murmured. Her eyes softened. "I'm learning that." His smile was faint but kind. "Good. Even giants deserve rest." She let out a slow breath, touched by the gentleness of his words. The cabin shifted subtly, a sign of the aircraft adjusting altitude. A faint chime signaled a change in cabin pressure. Passengers stirred slightly, though most remained asleep. She lowered the tablet and rested her head against the seat, letting her thoughts drift again. The video was out. The world was watching, and she was no longer just a passenger who refused to move. She was becoming a symbol she hadn't agreed to be. The realization left her with a mixture of fear and strange clarity. Part of her wanted to hide from the unfolding storm. Another part felt something else rising inside her, a steadying force she couldn't yet define. She heard a soft shuffle of steps. Taylor approached quietly, stopping beside her with a gentle look. "Is everything okay?" Alana hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Complicated," she whispered. Taylor folded her hands, eyes soft with empathy. "I hope you know you're not alone in this." Alana met her gaze, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Taylor. That means more than you realize." Taylor offered a small, heartfelt smile before returning to her station. Alana sank deeper into her seat. The engines hummed their steady rhythm. The sky wrapped around the aircraft in dark tranquility. But inside her, something was awakening, something she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge until now. She wasn't just carrying the weight of what had happened. She was carrying the beginning of something much larger. And deep down, she sensed that when the plane touched down in Washington, the world would not greet her with silence. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't sure she feared that. She simply wasn't ready. But readiness wasn't always the measure of destiny. Sometimes, the moment arrived whether or not your heart had caught up. Tonight, as the aircraft drifted through the dark sky, she felt that truth settle gently inside her. The world was shifting, and she was shifting with it. The hum of the engines softened as the aircraft settled deeper into the night sky, gliding through air so calm it felt like they were suspended in place. The amber lighting cast a gentle glow across the cabin, warm enough to feel safe, dim enough to encourage rest. Most passengers slept, breathing evenly, unaware of the world stirring beneath them. Alana sat still, eyes half closed, the faint reflection of the window resting on her cheek. She tried to focus on the steady rhythm of the flight, hoping it would calm the unease expanding in her chest. But her mind kept circling back to Keating's face on the screen, the urgency in his tone. The world was awake, even while the cabin slept. She breathed slowly, letting the tension slide through her fingers. Then, softly, a small light blinked on her tablet, a notification. She hesitated before reaching for it. Her pulse fluttered when she saw the label, "Trending Worldwide." Her thumb paused above the screen. She wasn't ready for this, but the truth no longer waited for readiness. She tapped the alert. The screen lit up with a video thumbnail showing herself seated on the plane, her posture calm, her face steady, her hands clasped loosely. She recognized the moment instantly. It was before the freeze, before the captain approached, before she touched the device that halted the fleet. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling something inside her tighten. She clicked play. The video began with muffled voices and shaky camera movements. Someone had recorded discreetly from several rows back. It captured Natalie's nervousness, the Legacy Elite passenger's entitlement, the uncomfortable tension spreading through the cabin as passengers shifted uneasily. The microphone picked up whispers. Why won't she move? She's in her assigned seat. No. She paid for that seat. Is this really happening? Then the recording focused on Alana, quiet, composed, refusing to be pushed out of the space she had every right to occupy. The woman filming lowered her voice to a whisper near the microphone. I don't think she's doing anything wrong. She's just sitting there, and they're treating her like she doesn't belong. Another voice chimed in softly. If she were anyone else, would they be asking this? The camera captured the moments just before the captain approached her. Alana watched her own expression on the screen, a mixture of calm and weariness, the poise she maintained even as discomfort pressed in around her. She didn't see a powerful CEO. She saw a woman sitting alone, enduring something she had endured too many times before. The familiar sting surfaced in her chest. She turned down the volume, but kept watching. Passengers in the video exchanged uneasy glances. Someone whispered, "This doesn't feel right." The clip ended abruptly when the freeze triggered. The last thing shown was her fingertips brushing the device. The screen returned to the trending page. Comments flooded every corner of the display. She handled that with dignity. Why did they even question her seat? This happens way too often. Imagine treating someone like that and not knowing she's the architect of your system. Others were harsher, angrier. This is what people deal with every day. They only respect you once they know your title. She shouldn't need power to be treated like a human being. Alana exhaled slowly, her heartbeat stretching thin inside her chest. This was not the kind of exposure she wanted, not the conversation she wished to dominate the night. Yet it was happening, unstoppable. A quiet rustle drew her attention. The older gentleman in 1C had shifted slightly, his eyes just barely open. He must have sensed something in her posture because he turned his face toward her. Couldn't sleep? His voice was soft, lined with understanding. Not really, she whispered. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Bad news travels fast up here. She allowed herself a faint smile. It does. He adjusted his blanket, giving her his full attention without making it feel intrusive. Do you regret how the night unfolded? She looked down at her hands resting in her lap. Her voice was low. I regret the world seeing something so personal before I had time to understand it myself. He nodded gently. But do you regret standing your ground? She lifted her gaze, meeting his. No. That single word resonated in the quiet. The man smiled, not in triumph, but in recognition. Then hold on to that. Everything else will take its time. His reassurance warmed something inside her, yet the unease remained. She leaned back into her seat, letting the quiet settle again. The engines hummed a steady tone beneath the cabin. A soft chime signaled a change in altitude. Outside, the sky darkened further, the stars thinning as clouds drifted below. She reopened the tablet, scanning news feeds. Headlines glowed across the screen. Black CEO denied first-class seat spark industry, reckoning fleet freeze raises. Questions about bias in air travel witnesses. Described night of rare poise and power. The words felt heavy, too heavy. She scrolled further, landing on a clip of a newsroom panel discussing the event. She pressed play. One commentator spoke with concern. We're talking about a systemic issue. This isn't about power. This is about how certain passengers are treated the moment they walk onto a plane. Another added, She didn't threaten anyone. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't break a single rule. And yet she was singled out. Why, a third voice chimed in. Her identity shouldn't matter. But it does. And that's the problem. Alana closed the clip, her pulse quickening. This was spiraling quickly. Too quickly. She lowered the tablet and let it rest on her lap. Her eyes drifted to the window again. She watched faint streaks of distant clouds passing below, illuminated by moonlight. Then a soft presence approached. Taylor stood beside her, her expression gentle. Everything okay? Alana hesitated. Not entirely. Taylor nodded, as if expecting that answer. I saw the video, she whispered. One of the crew just sent it to me. It's everywhere. Alana looked up slowly. I never wanted attention. I just wanted fairness. Taylor's eyes softened. Sometimes fairness demands attention. Alana's breath stilled. Taylor continued quietly. I wish I had spoken earlier. I wish I had stepped in before things escalated. I didn't, and I'm sorry for that. Alana studied her. There was no defensiveness in Taylor's voice, no attempt to justify her choices, only sincerity. You did speak, Alana replied softly. Maybe not at the beginning, but you spoke when it mattered. Taylor nodded, her eyes glistening with gratitude. If you ever need help, with anything, I'm here. She stepped back to give Alana space. The cabin returned to silence. Alana rested her palms against her thighs, grounding herself. She felt the pressure of many eyes she couldn't see. People on the ground, people online, people waiting for her response. And yet here she was, suspended between cities, somewhere in the dark, still trying to understand the moment that had begun long before the freeze. She inhaled deeply. She wasn't afraid of the storm outside anymore. She feared the storm inside her more. But another truth surfaced, warm and steady. Storms clear paths too. She closed her eyes, letting that truth settle, shaping itself slowly into courage. The aircraft glided through the night, carrying her toward a landing she could not predict. Whatever waited below, she sensed it would demand more of her than she had ever given. And for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face what came next. Not because she was unshaken, but because she finally understood the strength in being shaken and still choosing to remain whole. The aircraft drifted eastward through a layer of thin clouds, leaving faint trails of moisture across the windows. The cabin remained dimmed, a soft amber wash settling gently over resting faces and folded blankets. The night outside felt endless, an open canvas of dark velvet with scattered stars pulsing faintly in the distance. Alana rested her head against the seat, eyes half closed. The tablet lay quietly on her lap, screen dark now, as if giving her a moment to breathe after flooding her world with uneasy truth. Her pulse had steadied, though not fully. Every inhale brought a slight ache, a reminder of the weight gathering around her. Her thoughts drifted to the people who had asked something of her when the plane landed. Reporters, executives, regulators, voices trying to shape the story into something neat, something convenient, but nothing about tonight felt convenient. Her mind drifted back to childhood for a moment. She remembered sitting beside her mother, watching the older woman stitch torn fabric with quiet determination. Her mother used to say, "The truth will always pull loose threads into the open. Your choice is whether to tie them or let them unravel." Tonight felt like a handful of loose threads she could no longer ignore. As she exhaled slowly, a gentle buzz vibrated against her palm. Another incoming message. The screen lit softly and showed a familiar name. Monique Pierce, her sister. Alana's breath caught. She hesitated for several seconds before tapping the message. A video call request flashed on the screen. Her heartbeat fluttered, unsure if she was ready to see someone who knew her so completely. but she pressed accept. Monique's face appeared, illuminated by lamplight in what looked like her living room. Her hair was tied loosely, her expression a mix of worry and tender relief. "You're okay." Her voice trembled just slightly. "Tell me you're okay." Alana swallowed. "I'm all right, Mon. Just tired. It's been a long night." Monique exhaled deeply, running a hand over her forehead. "Everyone's talking about you. The video, the freeze, everything. I've been answering calls since it hit the news." Alana looked away for a moment, letting the truth settle in her chest. "I didn't want this to spread." Monique's voice softened. "I know you didn't, but it did, and people are seeing something they needed to see." Alana felt a mixture of gratitude and discomfort rise inside her. "That's what scares me." Monique leaned a little closer to the camera, her eyes warm. "You've spent your whole life trying not to make waves, trying to make things smoother for everyone else. But Alana, sometimes the world needs the wave." Her words landed gently but firmly. Alana felt her throat tighten. "I didn't want to be the center of anything." "You didn't choose it," Monique replied. "But you didn't shy away from it either. There's a difference." The older passenger in 1C stirred quietly, sensing the soft weight of her conversation, but respectfully staying in his seat, eyes closed. Alana looked at her sister again. "I'm afraid of what this becomes." Monique softened her voice even more. "I'm afraid of what happens if you pretend it didn't matter." The words broke through Alana's hesitation like a small crack letting light in. A long silence followed. Not heavy, just honest. "Finally," Alana whispered, "I don't know what people expect from me now." Monique shook her head. "They expect you to breathe. That's all for now. Handle this the way you handle everything, with calm and truth." Alana felt tears prick faintly at the corners of her eyes, though none fell. "Thank you." Monique smiled gently. "I'm here when you land. Call me when you can." "All right, I will." The call ended softly. Alana held the tablet against her chest for a moment, letting the warmth of the screen fade slowly. Her breathing settled, but deeper thoughts began to rise in the quiet. She wasn't alone in this, but she wasn't shielded either. Something had shifted in the world tonight, and inside her. Her memory stirred, forming a quiet montage behind her closed eyes. The boardrooms where her voice felt muffled. The award stages where her accomplishments were noted but her personhood overlooked. That dinner years ago where a colleague had mistaken her for staff. The countless airport lounges where she sat alone, feeling watched but unseen. Tonight was not new. It was simply the first time the world had been forced to witness it with her. A faint movement caught her attention. The woman in 2A had risen quietly and now stood beside her row, pausing respectfully before speaking. "Dr. Pierce." Her voice was soft. Alana turned her head. "Sorry to disturb you. I wanted to tell you something before I lose the courage." Alana nodded gently. "Go ahead." The woman's hands twisted slightly, revealing the nerves beneath her calm appearance. "I watched the video, too. And I realized something. I realized how many moments like that I've ignored. Moments where I saw something wrong and chose comfort over courage." Alana's eyes softened, inviting honesty. The woman continued, "I don't want to be that person anymore. What you did tonight? You gave a lot of us permission to examine ourselves, and I hope you know the world needed that. Even if it feels like a storm now." Her voice trembled, but she steadied herself. "So thank you for existing the way you do, for not moving." Alana felt her breath deepen, warm and steady. She answered quietly, "Sometimes staying seated is the bravest thing I can manage." The woman nodded, a gentle smile forming, "And sometimes it's enough." She returned to her seat, leaving a warm stillness behind her. Alana leaned back again, letting that stillness sink deeper. Then another notification appeared. This one smaller, more discreet. A direct message from Director Keating. Call needed before landing. Her pulse flickered, but she didn't open it yet. Not now. Her spirit felt too tender, too open. Instead, she inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the quiet hum of the engines. The older man in 1C spoke again, his eyes still half closed. People won't forget what they saw tonight, he murmured, but don't let that frighten you. Influence is simply truth with an audience. Alana absorbed his words. Truth with an audience. She repeated them silently, letting them resonate within her chest. Her eyes drifted to the window once more. The clouds outside glowed faintly with moonlight, shifting slowly like drifting silk. The view felt calm but vast, urging her toward something larger than she had ever dared imagine. She didn't know what would meet her at the airport or what conversations would unfold. But for the first time since the plane lifted off, she felt a quiet, rising resolve. Not loud, not forced, just slowly gathering shape. Whatever waited below, she would face it with both strength and tenderness. She didn't have to shout to be heard. Her quiet truth was already echoing across the world. She closed her eyes, letting the night carry her forward. The storm outside had passed, but the storm inside had finally begun to clear too. The aircraft pressed forward through the quiet hours of the early morning. The sky outside had begun to shift, losing its deep midnight blue and softening toward a faint gradient that hinted at dawn somewhere beyond the horizon. The cabin, however, remained tucked in its amber stillness, as if guarding the last stretch of night before reality intruded again. Alana sat with her eyes half open, drifting between thought and reflection. Fatigue tugged gently at the edges of her awareness, but her mind refused to rest. Everything she had tried to tuck away since boarding the flight felt too close now, too present. Yet beneath the swirl of noise and worry, a steadier feeling had begun to form, clarity, not fully shaped, but stirring. She shifted slightly in her seat, stretching her fingers along the fabric of the armrest. The vibration of the engines grounded her, humming through the metal beneath her touch. That subtle physical sensation reminded her she was still here, still moving forward, even if she didn't know what waited at the end of the journey. Another soft buzz pulsed from her tablet. Not an alert, a reminder. She had a scheduled briefing with federal advisors immediately upon landing. Her breath stilled for a moment, not out of fear, but out of the sheer weight of it. Before she could decide whether to open the tablet again, a gentle voice reached her. Couldn't sleep either. The older passenger in 1C was awake now, sitting upright, his expression calm and warm. The dim cabin lights brushed across his silver hair, giving him an almost serene air. Alana offered a tired smile. Not much. He nodded, as if he had expected that. Your eyes look like you've been carrying more than the plane. A soft laugh escaped her before she could help it. That obvious. The man tilted his head thoughtfully, only to someone who's carried their own share. Alana lowered her gaze, letting the silence stretch gently. After a moment, she asked quietly, Do you ever feel like the world expects you to be more than you can be? He rested his hands together. Often, but I learned something valuable. Expectations are loud. Purpose is quiet. When you can tell them apart, life stops feeling like a burden. His words sank into her like warm water, loosening knots she hadn't realized were tightening. She turned her eyes toward the window. The sky outside had lightened slightly more, now a soft charcoal with streaks of muted lavender. She whispered, I don't know what my purpose is anymore, at least not tonight. The older man gave her a gentle, knowing look. Purpose doesn't reveal itself in the center of chaos. It shows up in the quiet moments after, the ones you're just beginning to step into. Alana swallowed softly, letting the truth settle. before she could respond. The cabin intercom clicked softly. The captain's voice drifted through the speakers, smooth and calm, careful not to disturb those still sleeping. Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting a sunrise view as we begin our descent in a couple of hours. For now, please continue to rest. We'll share updates shortly. The cabin fell quiet once more. Alana closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the engines lull her into a lighter space, not sleep, just a softer place inside herself. Her peace didn't last long. A faint vibration buzzed against her palm again. She opened her eyes, expecting another alert from Keating or the advisory team. Instead, she saw a message with a name she hadn't thought about in weeks. Harper Lyons, her chief communications officer. The subject line was brief. Just 2 words. Call me. Alana hesitated. She knew Harper well enough to understand the urgency in that simplicity. Harper never wasted language when something mattered. After a few steady breaths, she tapped the message. Harper answered almost immediately. Her face appeared on the screen, framed by soft overhead lighting, her curly hair tied back, her expression a mix of exhaustion and fierce purpose. It looked like she hadn't slept at all. Alana, thank God. Alana straightened slightly. Tell me what's happening. Harper inhaled sharply, steadying herself. First, I need you to know, our teams are working nonstop to control the narrative. But that video she paused, it's taking a life of its own. Alana felt a familiar pang in her chest. I figured as much. Harper nodded. It's not just trending. It's become a symbol. People are calling it the Pierce moment. Alana blinked, a symbol of what Harper leaned closer to the screen, eyes intense, of dignity under pressure, of bias being exposed, of someone refusing to be pushed from a place they rightfully belonged. People are resonating with it in ways I haven't seen before. Alana exhaled slowly. I didn't ask for any of this. Harper's voice softened. You didn't. But sometimes the truth arrives without permission. The phrasing struck Alana deeply. She lowered her eyes. Harper continued carefully. Skyvista is drafting a statement. They want to acknowledge the incident and express gratitude that the freeze was resolved safely. But Alana, they're also asking for your input. Alana lifted her gaze. They want me to endorse their version of the story. Harper's silence was answer enough. Alana ran her thumb slowly along the edge of the tablet. What does their version say? Harper exhaled, weary, that the situation was a misunderstanding, that you acted in partnership with the crew, that no bias was involved. Alana closed her eyes briefly. That isn't the truth. I know, Harper replied gently, but they're trying to protect themselves. Alana looked back out the window. The horizon was beginning to brighten, threads of faint gold lacing through the thinning darkness. I won't lie to protect convenience, she whispered. Harper's expression softened with quiet pride. I didn't think you would. Silence settled for a moment between them. Then Harper added, You don't need to decide anything right now. Just know that people are listening, and some are listening with open hearts. Alana nodded. Thank you for telling me. Get some rest if you can. Harper said, I'll message again when you're closer to landing. The call ended gently. Alana set the tablet down, her fingers lingering on its surface. Every decision felt like a stone, added to the growing weight in her chest. But beneath that weight, something steadier was rising, something she hadn't recognized in herself for a long time. Resolve. She leaned back, the leather of the seat cool against her skin. The older man in 1C watched her quietly, not intruding, simply seeing her. She offered him a faint, knowing smile. He spoke softly. Your name carries a weight tonight, but it will only break you if you forget you are the one who shaped it. Alana's breath caught, held for a moment, then released slowly. The sky outside the window continued to brighten, the first hint of dawn brushing the edges of the world. Inside the cabin, she felt the faint stirrings of a new beginning. Not one she asked for, but one she would meet fully. The night was thinning, and morning, with all its consequences, was on its way. The first light of morning touched the edge of the horizon, brushing the clouds with a gentle gold that seemed too soft, too delicate for the weight inside the aircraft. The shift from night to day felt slow and patient, like the sky was giving the world time to steady itself before stepping into the brightness. Alana watched the subtle colors bloom across the window. She had always loved the quiet of early morning flights, when the sky felt like it belonged only to those awake enough to witness it. But today, this dawn felt different. It did not soothe her. It illuminated her. Everything she had tried to keep tucked in the darkness was starting to show its shape. She breathed in deeply, letting the cool air fill her chest, grounding her. She knew she was approaching the part of the journey where quiet would no longer protect her. Soon she would land, and the world would be waiting with its questions, its narratives, its demands. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she knew she had to be honest. A soft rustling came from the seat beside her. The older passenger in one seat shifted, stretching gently before settling upright. He glanced at her, his expression warm yet observant. "Long night?" he said gently. Alana offered a small smile. "Longer than I expected." He nodded, understanding more than she said. Dawn has a way of showing everything we tried to ignore. She looked out the window again, the colors brightening slowly. It does. The older man folded his hands in his lap. "Have you thought about what you'll say when you land?" Alana let out a slow breath, her eyes still on the sky. "I've thought about what I won't say." He waited, patient. "I won't pretend it was just a misunderstanding. I won't excuse what happened so corporations can sleep comfortably, and I won't diminish the truth of the moment." He nodded, a soft pride in his eyes. "Sometimes clarity arrives before courage, but I think you have both now." She gave him a grateful look. "I'm trying." The cabin around them stirred gently as some passengers began to wake. A few blinked blearily at the growing light, adjusting themselves, stretching, pulling blankets closer. The world on board was slowly coming back to life, piece by piece. Footsteps approached down the aisle. Taylor appeared, her expression warm but tinged with worry, as though she'd been thinking about Alana throughout the night. "Good morning, Dr. Pierce," she whispered. "Thought you might want something warm before we begin preparing for landing." She handed over a cup of fresh coffee, steam rising in delicate swirls that curled quietly in the dim cabin light. Alana took the cup carefully. "Thank you, Taylor. Truly." Taylor's eyes softened. "Everything's changing out there. People are talking. I can feel it." Alana nodded slowly. "I know." Taylor hesitated before adding, "I hope the world listens to you the way we did tonight." Alana's voice softened. "I hope they listen to the truth, not the noise." Taylor nodded, then returned down the aisle, her steps light but thoughtful. Alana cradled the warm cup, letting the heat seep into her palms. It steadied her more than she expected. She inhaled the mild aroma and took a slow sip. The dawn outside brightened further, warming the sky with deeper shades of amber and rose. The colors felt alive, pulsing gently across the horizon. Her tablet chimed softly again. Another message, but this one she didn't dread. Monique had sent a short text. "No matter what happens when you land, remember who you are, and remember who you were before any of this began." Alana stared at the message, her chest tightening with emotion. She whispered to herself, "I remember." A movement in the row behind her broke her reverie. The woman in 2A leaned forward slightly, careful not to intrude too much. "Dr. Pierce," Alana turned slightly. "I just wanted to say, you look steadier this morning." Alana gave a faint smile. Maybe the sky helped. The woman smiled gently. Or maybe you helped yourself. The words touched her more deeply than she expected. Thank you, Alana replied softly. The woman leaned back again, giving her space. The aircraft shifted slightly as it began a gradual descent, the engines adjusting to the new altitude. Passengers stirred even more now. A baby let out a soft cry before settling again. The air held a quiet anticipation. Alana closed her eyes briefly. She needed a moment, a breath, a space to feel all the things she hadn't allowed herself to feel. She thought about the freeze, the unexpected power that revealed itself not through anger, but through protection. She thought about the passengers, watching her with bewilderment and awe. She thought about the world now talking about her, assigning meaning to her actions. In that stillness, she felt something subtle shift inside her. For so long she'd been afraid that stepping into her truth would make her less gentle, less grounded, less human. Yet tonight had proven the opposite. Standing in her truth had not hardened her. It had clarified her. She whispered into the quiet, "I'm not running from this." As if on cue, the captain's voice drifted through the speakers again, smooth and calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our initial descent shortly. Cabin crew, please prepare for landing." The message settled over the cabin like a reminder. The quiet was ending. The day was beginning. Taylor and Natalie, now working side by side, moved through the aisle. Their faces were calmer than the night before, more certain, almost protective. When Taylor passed Alana's row again, she paused briefly. "Once we land, things might move very quickly. If you need a moment alone or a safe exit route, I'll help." Alana looked up at her. "You've been incredibly kind." Taylor shook her head gently. "I'm just doing what I should have done sooner." Alana touched her arm lightly. "We all learn at our own pace." Taylor's eyes glistened for a moment before she continued down the aisle. The older man in one seat turned toward Alana again. "You know," he said softly, "when I was younger, I thought the world would change through grand speeches or bold revolutions. But later, I learned something truer." Alana looked at him, listening. He continued with a calm, warm voice. "The world changes through moments where someone chooses not to move. Not out of defiance, but out of dignity." A soft breath escaped her. "Maybe this is one of those moments." He smiled. "It already is." The aircraft continued its descent, dipping lower into the brightening sky. The clouds parted slowly, revealing hints of land far below, still wrapped in morning mist. Alana placed a hand over her heart, feeling its quiet strength. She didn't know exactly what the world expected from her next, but for the first time since the chaos began, she no longer felt afraid of her own name. She felt ready to step into whatever truth the day required. Not perfect, not unshaken, but present. As the plane continued toward Washington, the dawn grew brighter, painting the world beneath them in soft gold. A new day waited, and Alana was finally ready to face it. The aircraft descended steadily, gliding through a thin layer of pale morning clouds that drifted like soft curtains across the windows. Each movement felt deliberate, carrying with it the sense that whatever waited below would not be gentle or quiet. Yet inside the cabin, the world remained suspended in a kind of fragile calm. Alana watched the clouds slip past, their edges tinged with gold and silver. There was something almost sacred about the moment when the plane dipped beneath the highest layer, revealing the muted landscape far below. Roads and winding rivers shimmered faintly in the early light. The world was awakening slowly, unaware of the burden she carried toward it. She placed one hand lightly against the window, tracing the cold surface with her fingertips. The chill grounded her. Her breath fogged a faint circle on the glass, then slowly faded. Behind her, someone shifted. The woman in 208 leaned forward again, her voice just above a whisper. "Doctor." Pierce. Alana turned. I know you have a lot waiting for you when we land. But before the moment comes, I want to say something." Alana nodded, inviting her to speak. The woman took a slow breath. "Last night, I realized something painful about myself. I realized I've always been more comfortable admiring people like you from a distance than defending people like you when it mattered." Her eyes dimmed with quiet regret. "I don't want to be that person anymore." Alana felt a warm ache bloom in her chest. There was something deeply human in the woman's confession, something familiar. She answered softly, "Awareness is a beginning, not an ending." The woman offered a small, grateful nod before sitting back again. A gentle chime echoed through the cabin. The flight attendants moved with a quiet sense of purpose, securing compartments, checking seat belts, touching shoulders to wake passengers with kindness rather than urgency. Taylor approached again, this time with a calmer expression than the night before. Alana noticed the subtle way she carried herself now, as though something inside her had realigned. "We'll be landing in about 20 minutes, she said softly. "If you need privacy once we reach the gate, signal me. I'll help you move through the crowd." Alana gave a thoughtful nod. "Thank you." Taylor hesitated, then asked, "Are you feeling ready?" Alana answered gently. "But I'm steady." Taylor breathed out slowly, relief settling across her features. "That's enough." She stepped away as the aircraft leveled briefly before continuing its descent. The older man in one seat turned slightly toward Alana, eyes bright with quiet understanding. "Moments like these," he said softly, "are the ones that carve us a little deeper, not to wound, but to shape." Alana absorbed his words, her mind drifting through the long night behind her. Every conversation, every message, every truth spoken aloud had seemed to peel back another layer of her own hesitation. She whispered, "I just hope I won't be swallowed by it." He shook his head gently. "People are not swallowed by truth, only by fear of it." A faint tremor of emotion passed through her. The plane dipped again, clouds thinning until the ground grew clearer patches of forest, long roads stretching toward the horizon, rooftops catching the newborn light. This was happening. The descent, the arrival, the shift from quiet to responsibility. Her tablet buzzed again. A new message from Director Keating. "Landing protocol updated. Prepare for escorted exit. Press presence confirmed." Alana closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle but not overwhelm her. The weight of them pressed against her ribs but did not crush her. Not like before. She pressed the tablet screen off and set it aside. The older man watched her with gentle curiosity. "News from below," Alana nodded slowly. "They want to escort me out." His brows lifted faintly. "To protect you or to contain you?" A small, wry breath left her. "I suppose I'll find out soon." He gave her a reassuring smile. "Just remember your truth isn't theirs to manage." She felt a ripple inside her, part fear, part courage, growing stronger with every mile the plane descended. The intercom clicked again. The captain's voice came through, calm but resonant. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach. Please take your seats and fasten your belts. Cabin crew, prepare for landing." The cabin responded with soft murmurs and shifting bodies. Seat belts clicked. Bags were pushed forward. Heads lifted to look out the windows or down at hands folded tightly in laps. Alana sat straighter, fastening her belt with slow, deliberate care. Her heartbeat steadied itself, finding a slow, even rhythm. She rested both palms on her thighs and inhaled deeply. Her mother used to tell her that courage didn't announce itself. It revealed its presence in the calm before a difficult moment. This must have been that calm. The runway came into view far below, nothing more than a faint line in the widening landscape. The engines deepened in pitch as the plane aligned with its path. As the ground grew closer, the older man spoke once more. "Dr. Pierce." She turned her head slightly. No matter how many voices wait for you, remember that your silence is just as powerful as your words. Choose carefully which one to give. She felt a quiet strength blossom inside her, settling warmly in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, satisfied. The wheels met the ground with a soft thud, followed by a long, steady rumble as the plane slowed along the runway. A faint shiver passed through the cabin, and for a moment, everything held still. Passengers exhaled in unison, as if waking from a shared dream. The aircraft rolled toward the terminal, sunlight now breaking fully across its wings. The cabin lights brightened slightly, melting away the last remnants of the night. As they taxied forward, Alana felt the shift within herself complete. The hesitation had not vanished, but it no longer controlled her. The fear had not dissolved, but it had loosened its grip. She was simply present, steady, ready to meet the day. The plane came to a gentle stop. The intercom clicked again. "Welcome to Washington. Please remain seated until we reach the gate and the seatbelt sign is turned off." Passengers murmured softly, stretching limbs and gathering belongings. The atmosphere held an unspoken anticipation, as though many sensed the significance of what was about to happen. Taylor approached one last time before the doors opened. "Dr. Pierce," she said quietly. "I'll stand near the front when it's time. Whenever you're ready, I'll guide you out." Alana looked into her eyes and answered with calm certainty. "Thank you, Taylor. I'll be ready." Outside the window, the gates and jet bridges stood in the morning light, shadows stretching long across the ground. Whatever waited beyond that door, she would face it with truth. The engines powered down. The cabin fell into a deep, suspended quiet, and Alana breathed in the first full breath of the day. The cabin lights glowed with full morning brightness as the aircraft settled quietly at the gate. The engines had already softened into silence, leaving only the faint hum of ventilation and the rustle of passengers preparing to stand. Despite the calm, the air carried a quiet tension, as if everyone sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the moment just before a threshold is crossed. Alana remained seated for a moment longer, her hands resting lightly on her lap. She could feel her heartbeat in the tips of her fingers, steady but deliberate. Nothing inside her felt rushed. Nothing felt frantic, but everything felt significant. Taylor stood near the first row, one hand resting gently against a seat back. She looked toward Alana with a calm that seemed rehearsed but sincere. There was a kind of unspoken promise in her expression. She would guide. She would protect. Alana inhaled slowly and unbuckled her seatbelt. Time. The soft chime of the seatbelt sign turning off filled the cabin. Immediately, passengers began rising from their seats, some stretching, others reaching for bags, some glancing toward the front with curiosity they tried not to show too openly. The older man in 1C rose carefully, steadying himself before turning toward Alana. His gentle smile returned. "You have a good heart, Dr. Pierce. Don't let the noise outside dim it." She felt the words land quietly but firmly. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, "for everything." He gave her a small bow of the head. "Walk with dignity. The rest will take care of itself." He stepped aside, giving her space to stand. As Alana rose, sliding her bag onto her shoulder, the woman in 2A leaned forward slightly. "I'll be thinking of you today," she whispered. Not in worry, in hope. Alana felt warmth bloom across her chest. "Thank you." She followed Taylor's gesture toward the front. Passengers instinctively parted slightly, creating a subtle path for her. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was intentional. As she moved forward, whispers floated around her, quiet but unmistakable. "That's her. The woman from the video. She's the CEO. She stayed so calm. I hope she's all right." She didn't look toward the voices. She kept her gaze soft, focused forward. "When she reached the front galley, Natalie stood beside the exit door, her expression thoughtful, almost reverent. "Dr. Pierce," she murmured, "before you go, I want to say I'm sorry that it took last night for me to understand things I should have known sooner." Alana offered a gentle smile. "Awareness is the beginning. You have the rest of your life to grow from it." Natalie's eyes shimmered with emotion before she stepped aside. Taylor approached the door, hand poised near the handle. She glanced at Alana. "Are you ready?" Alana looked at the closed door. Beyond it was noise, cameras, voices, people waiting to shape her story before she could speak her own truth. But inside, she felt something calm and stronger than fear. "I'm ready." Taylor pulled the door open. Sunlight flooded in, bright and full, casting long shapes across the jet bridge. The first step outside felt heavier than anything Alana had carried through the night. The air was cool, scented with metal and jet fuel and morning fog drifting in from the edges of the airport. 2 uniformed airport escorts waited on the jet bridge. They weren't imposing, just prepared. One stepped forward with a respectful nod. "Dr. Pierce, welcome to Washington. We'll guide you through a private route." Before Alana could respond, a muffled swell of noise rose from beyond the glass wall. Reporters had already gathered at the end of the concourse. Microphones, cameras, flashing lights, voices rising and falling like waves she could already feel tugging at her. Taylor sensed her hesitation. "We'll take the side corridor. It's quieter." Alana nodded, grateful. The escorts led them along a narrow passageway parallel to the main terminal. Through the glass, she could see crowds gathering, pushing closer to the line of security personnel. Some held phones. Others held signs she couldn't fully read. She turned her gaze away. They continued down the corridor until they reached a small service elevator. One of the escorts pressed the call button, then stepped aside as the doors opened. Inside the elevator, the space felt strangely intimate. No one spoke. The gentle hum of machinery filled the quiet. The descent was slow, steady, a kind of pause before the next step. When the doors opened again, they emerged into a private arrivals hall usually reserved for diplomats and corporate leaders. The room was spacious, neutral in color, with soft overhead lighting and a row of seats along the wall. Harper Lyons was already there, pacing slowly, her face taut with focus. The moment she saw Alana, she rushed forward. "Thank God," she breathed. "Are you all right?" Alana nodded. "I'm steady." Harper let out a long breath, pressing a hand over her heart. "There are more reporters than expected. More officials, too. The video ignited something bigger than any of us predicted." Alana glanced toward the hallway beyond the seating area, where muted commotion echoed faintly. I could feel it from the plane. Harper took a slow breath, steadying herself. "Sky Vista released a statement an hour ago. It's careful. Too careful. They're avoiding the word bias entirely." Alana's jaw tightened slightly. "So they want a clean story. They want a controlled story," Harper corrected softly. Alana lifted her chin, that steady resolve returning. "Then I won't help them control it." Harper's eyes softened with quiet pride. "I knew you'd say that." Taylor stepped forward quietly. "Dr. Pierce, if you need me to stay." Alana turned to her, her expression warm. "Taylor, you've already done more than enough. Thank you." Taylor lowered her eyes, deeply moved. "If you ever need anything at all, I'm here." Alana offered a gentle nod before watching Taylor disappear back toward the private elevator. The older man's words echoed in her mind. "Your truth isn't theirs to manage." Harper pulled up her tablet. "There's a holding room before the press area. You can choose whether to speak or release a written statement instead. It's entirely up to you." Alana considered this for a long moment. She felt the weight of responsibility settle across her shoulders again. But this time, It did not bend her. She spoke quietly. "I'll speak. Not for the cameras. For the people who needed that moment to be seen." Harper closed her eyes briefly, relief washing over her. "Then I'll prepare the space." Alana walked toward a glass wall overlooking the concourse. Below, the crowd had grown even larger. Signs were now visible. "We stand with you. Dignity matters." Her seat was earned. Her heartbeat deepened, warm and steady. For the first time, she felt not the weight of the world, but the weight of being seen. She whispered to herself, "This isn't the end of the night. It's the beginning of the day." The morning sun reached across the floor through the glass, touching her feet, rising slowly toward her hands. She stepped into its light. The door to the holding room closed with a gentle click, sealing Alana inside a quiet space warmed by soft lighting and muted gray walls. It felt almost like a small sanctuary tucked between the chaos of the terminal and the world waiting just beyond the next corridor. A single rectangular table sat in the center with 2 chairs on opposite sides. Beside the window, a narrow planter with low green leaves added a touch of calm that felt strangely grounding. Harper stood near the table, adjusting files, straightening notes, making sure everything was aligned. She wasn't fidgeting. She was focusing, preparing, steadying her own courage through motion. Alana remained near the entrance, letting herself breathe the quiet in slowly. Harper looked up. "They're ready whenever you are. There's a podium just outside the partition. A small crowd of press. Not overwhelming, but present." Alana nodded, but didn't move yet. And the public area, Harper hesitated. Crowded. Very crowded. People are chanting your name. Some are holding signs. They aren't angry. They're hopeful. It feels unusual. Alana closed her eyes, absorbing that. Hope was always heavier than anger, but it was also gentler. She stepped farther into the room, fingers brushing the back of a chair before she let them fall again. Harper approached her quietly. "I want to ask you one last time," she said. "Are you sure you want to speak live? You could release a statement instead. It would still reach millions." Alana shook her head gently. "If the moment began with my voice being dismissed, let it continue with my voice being heard." Harper's expression softened into relief and admiration all at once. "Then we'll walk out when you're ready." Alana looked toward the window, where faint outlines of gathered people blurred through frosted glass, their shadows shifting like a single, living shape. She placed a hand lightly against the pane, feeling the cold seep into her skin. In the reflection, she caught a glimpse of herself. A woman who had not asked to carry a symbol. A woman who simply refused to shrink. She whispered, barely audible, "Let me speak clearly." Harper approached her side. "You're not alone in this." Alana nodded, then turned. "Let's go." They exited the holding room and moved down a short hallway toward the press area. The air changed as they walked, gaining a faint vibration, as though voices just beyond the partition were humming before rising. The escort team led the way, making sure the path remained clear. Then the corridor opened into the waiting space. A small crowd of reporters stood behind velvet ropes. Cameras pointed toward the podium. Microphones marked with network logos were positioned in a neat cluster. Conversations dipped into silence the moment Alana appeared. The room shifted, attention tightening around her like an invisible lens. Harper directed her forward with a gentle tilt of her head. Alana stepped toward the podium. Her footsteps echoed softly against the polished floor. Each step felt deliberate, like the ground beneath her was acknowledging the weight she carried into the room. When she reached the podium, she rested her palms lightly on its surface. The wood was warm from the lights above. A hush settled over the room. She lifted her gaze and began, "Good morning." The simple words seemed to travel farther than she intended, rippling through the still air. She continued, voice steady and slow. "Last night, an incident turned into a video. and the video turned into a conversation. I didn't intend for any of this to happen. I didn't intend to become a headline or a symbol. I simply asked to sit in the seat I paid for, the seat I earned, the seat I was told didn't belong to me. Reporters leaned forward, pens stilled. I responded calmly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't act out of anger. I acted out of truth. Because dignity isn't negotiable. Not mine. Not anyone's. She paused, letting the words settle. Last night wasn't about a flight. It wasn't about a seat. It wasn't about status or privilege. It was about the moment someone is told they don't belong, even when every part of their life says they do. Another pause. She felt her breath deepen. We have all had that moment. A moment where the world tries to shrink us. A moment where someone looks at us and sees something smaller than who we really are. And sometimes, we have to choose not to move. The room held perfectly still. I didn't freeze those planes to punish anyone. I froze them because safety, real safety, requires clarity. And in that moment, clarity was missing. I took action to protect myself, and every person on that aircraft. Soft murmurs passed through the crowd. She breathed in quietly. I don't ask for sympathy. I don't need outrage on my behalf. What I ask is simple. Let this moment mean something more than a headline. Let it be a reminder that dignity isn't optional. Respect cannot be conditional. And belonging should not be decided by someone at a counter. Her voice softened further. We can choose to be better, not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices, through small moments of awareness, through courage that speaks without shouting. A faint tremor of emotion warmed her words, but she stayed steady. I am grateful to those who helped, who showed kindness when it mattered, and I hope others can learn from this moment, not to assign blame, but to grow. She lowered her hand slightly. Thank you. Silence held for a breath. Then a single voice from the back called out, Dr. Pierce, what do you hope happens next? Alana turned her gaze toward the direction of the question. I hope we choose truth over convenience, humanity over habit, and progress over silence, another voice asked. Are you afraid of what comes after this? She let the question settle. Afraid, no. Aware, yes. But awareness isn't fear. It's preparation. One more voice rose. Do you regret what you did? She shook her head slowly. I regret only that the moment had to happen at all, not that I stood firm within it. The room exhaled. Harper stepped forward, signaling the end of questions. Dr. Pierce will not be taking further inquiries at this time. Alana stepped back from the podium. But something unexpected happened. The reporters didn't shout. They didn't surge. They didn't demand more. Instead, they parted gently, creating a path for her exit. Harper whispered, They heard you. As Alana walked through the aisle of cameras and microphones, she realized something profound. This wasn't the end of a crisis. It was the beginning of a conversation. And she had stepped into it without losing herself. At the end of the corridor, glass doors opened into the private concourse. Beyond the glass, a soft chant rose from the crowd waiting outside security. Her name, not shouted, not demanded, but carried like a promise. Alana paused. The sunlight touched her shoulders. Warm and steady, she whispered to herself, Walk with dignity. Then she stepped forward, ready to meet whatever the day asked of her. The story. Black CEO denied first-class seat. Then grounds 145. Planes with 2 taps is more than just an airport incident. It reflects the silent things that exist in life: prejudice, invisible distance, and the small but persistent pain of being seen as not belonging. Alana Pierce reminds us that dignity is not something that can be negotiated. We cannot control how others see us, but we can choose to stand firm in moments of challenge. Calmness is sometimes louder than any scream. Truth is sometimes louder than any defense. for mature, older audiences. This story reminds us that throughout life, everyone has moments of being looked down upon. But it is those moments that create the backbone of dignity. Dare to keep your voice, even as small as a breath, still has the power to spread. And most importantly, the story opens up hope that despite the injustices in the world, there are still people strong enough to choose the right thing. And that choice helps others find courage within themselves. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If the story touches you even a little, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to spread good values and together continue the journey of healing stories.